Wang Yip.
Sean Kanungo.
And another episode of The Dip. This is number 5. We are midway through the first season. This is great.
Yeah.
Now, I was wondering because, a lot of people who are listening, they don't know what you look like. So please describe to the audience what you physically look like.
I've been told by some of my Korean friends that I look like the former president of South Korea.
Of South Korea.
Yes.
Okay. No name, so that
I don't remember the name.
Google.
I don't remember the name.
Now, the current South Korean president?
I don't know either.
Okay.
I think the former president was a female too, so that might give you a good indication. Good understanding of what I look like.
Feminine features. And then how would you describe your style?
Of dress or of...
Of dress.
I would say it's conservative, non-flamboyant.
Okay, good.
How about you, Sean?
Well, a lot of people say that I look like Sergio Aguero. He's an Argentinian soccer player.
Okay.
And I get stopped all the time saying that I
For autographs or for...
No, they're just like, hey, do you know that you look like this guy?
Oh, so they know that you're not that guy.
Yeah, it's weird because they'll say I'm not that guy, but I've gotten stopped, and since the World Cup,
yeah,
I've probably got stopped like 10 times. People saying that I look like him.
Yeah. Did you know who he was the first time people stopped you?
You know what? This episode is about the disruption of sports.
Yeah.
And I'm embarrassed to say that I actually didn't know who he was. I don't follow soccer.
I don't think I know who he was.
And so, but he's a fucking big player.
I'm sure he is.
He's a large player. And yeah, I look like him. And in terms of my style, I'm more, I would say, fast fashion. So I purchase my clothes from H&M or Uniqlo, something cheap but fashionable. Zara, I'm a little bit too chunky for Zara.
Okay.
Uniqlo and H&M fit me very well.
Yeah.
And that's where I get my clothes from.
But there's no Uniqlo here.
No, there's not. So anytime my friends go to New York or wherever, that's where I get my clothes. But anyways, this episode is about the disruption of sports. Now, Wang Yip. I want to understand like your level, like on a scale of 1 to 10. Mm-hmm. What is your perhaps engagement or understanding or level of interest in sports?
I'm very interested in sports. I have particularly good understanding of certain sports. For instance, hockey, I'm quite interested in. I know quite a bit about that. I know quite a bit about badminton. I play a lot of badminton myself. Would you consider chess a sport?
Well, chess is a sport. Obviously, it's not a major sport, but chess is a sport, yes.
I know a lot about chess. And then outside of that, I mean, I know some of the major stars in basketball, soccer, baseball, but I don't really know very much about the sport. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being incredibly smart about all aspects of sports, I would say I'm maybe around a 4.
A 4, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm surrounded by sport heads. A lot of my friends are massively into sports. Mm-hmm. I used to be probably more into it than I am now. Like I won my fantasy football pool last year. I played fantasy. I think when you play fantasy and you play like games, you become more. You just
into it. Yeah.
You just know more about sports. But then subsequently, since my wife and we cut our cable, like I don't get any sports on TV.
Okay.
And I only have Netflix, so I can't watch sports in real time, which is hampering my ability to watch sports. Also because like I don't have SportsCenter, like I don't have TSN, so I can't watch it. But I would say my level of knowledge of sports is like it's probably like a 6, maybe a 6.5.
Okay. And you're asking me because there must be a certain reason.
Well, we're talking about the disruption of sports, and what I want to show the audience is that even though you're not into sports, we can talk about it, and we can discuss the disruption in it. So,
okay.
I talked to an individual. He's a writer for Vice.
To the back. So
no worries. Do you want to restart?
Yeah, let's just restart that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Nihar Patel. I'm a California native. I have worked sometimes as a journalist, but also as a writer and director in Los Angeles for television, internet content, and some film. I had worked for National Public Radio for many years, as well as in Washington, D.C. for ABC News. And I do an occasional print piece like the one we're talking about today.
And what's happening in the NFL is there's many things. One, it's becoming increasingly a dangerous sport. You have these behemoths just hitting each other, colliding against each other, and it's becoming a very dangerous sport. In fact, just recently a player, 24 years old, retired from the sport because he was like, I ain't doing this anymore. Like, this is crazy. This is dangerous. So he got out of the game. If you look at how people are engaging with sports nowadays, they have their Twitter open, they got their laptop, they got their fantasy open. Like, people are engaging with sports events in a very different way on the couch, and even in the stadiums, people are doing the same things. So I talked to him about the future of sports, where it's going. I also talked to him about all that kind of stuff. He's a fun guy.
So is there disruption happening directly on the sports field, like in the sport itself? Is that what you talked about? Or is it more so how people engage with sports, like watching sports and, of course, participating in fantasy pools and things like that?
Yeah, so I asked them a question on both. So one of the questions that I asked them was, in business we see organizations falling all the time. In fact, if you look at the S&P 500, I think the length of time that people used to be on would be like 67 years. Now it's 15 years. If you look at, so companies rise and fall all the time. But if you look at the major sports, the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, MLB, these sports organizations have been around for like centuries. Well, not centuries, but
a long
century.
Time. Yeah.
Like, I think the NFL 1920, the NBA in the 50s or whenever it was. So they've been around for a long time. They are the incumbents, and no one has disrupted them. So I asked them that question.
So one of the things that is, because our podcast traditionally looks at businesses and the innovation and disruption in business. If you look at the Fortune 500, 89% of the Fortune 500 companies from 1955 are not on the list anymore. If you look at the average lifespan for companies on the S&P 500, it's decreased from 67 years to 15 years today. So the lifespan is very limited. Yet in sports, you have seen, the NFL, the MLB, the NHL, the NBA, they've lasted. They have not been disrupted. They are still the major incumbents, I would say, in their respective fields. Why is that? Why in business do we see companies rise and fall, yet in sports the same? These sports have lasted for centuries.
I think there are probably a few reasons. First of all, I think sports in general, the technological advances as far as television broadcasting, the internet, have really turned it from a sport, as one person in my article sort of said, into more of a television experience. It's a TV show in many ways. It's more than it is a competition, a sports competition. So in that sense, the product itself evolved over time. It wasn't like they were always selling Model Ts and then people didn't want Model Ts anymore. I think it was football, and then football became this other thing, and now football is this thing that, yes, it's played on the field, but is really about getting a fan more invested in a certain product in all these new exciting ways. So in that sense, it's kept up with technology. It's used technology to its advantage, and frankly, nothing has really come around to replace it. I know other sports have tried, like Major League Soccer, but some of the established the XFL, these other various leagues. But nothing has really replaced any of these things, probably because they were quick to adapt to new technology, and also some of these teams or universities that have football teams, the associations go fairly deep, and if you're from Alabama, the University of Alabama has been there for a long time, so that's not going away anytime soon. And that football team will exist for a long time. I think from a business standpoint, the leagues themselves, at least the NFL does, they operate as tax-exempt monopolies, basically, and they don't have to. Yes, the teams make a profit, but they're usually set up to share revenue. So even if a team is in a small market, they are able to support lower performing teams in terms of TV ratings because they're big markets and they're small markets. I think the question for the NFL is really, if there is one league that would be in danger of going away, it would probably be the NFL. The NBA has been successful in expanding overseas to different countries. It's a sport that's played internationally. The same thing could be said for baseball, hockey, soccer. Football is one of the few things that is just popular here. And really any attempts to make it popular elsewhere have just not taken off. And so in that sense, as the world gets more, the world economy kind of gets more integrated, a sport that is just native to one country probably has that going against it as well.
Now, I'm going to ask you, is sports similar to business? I would think that sports, like the NFL, is just like any other company.
I think it absolutely is. There's a certain customer that you're catering to. There's advertising around football, so you're selling something to the customer. It's not necessarily the sport itself, but of course the views and all that. And there's costs involved in football. You have to pay the football salary, players' salaries, coaches, all that stadium upkeep and things like that. So absolutely, it is a business.
So how has it endured the length of time that, if you see companies going up and down, in your opinion, why do sports organizations like the NFL, how can they still exist to this day?
I think there's two kind of key points to consider about these sports. So, for instance, if you're thinking about football, I think one of the two things that they did really well is the marketing aspect. I think the marketing aspect, and it's somehow become a culture of Americans. Football and Americans are almost synonymous.
Correct.
And
so I talked to him about the identity.
Yes.
And how they see sport as, he talked about the significance of sports and your personal identity.
Yeah. And then, I think the second thing is, I think sports have adapted in some way to the people. So if you think about 20, 30, 50 years ago, you could watch sports on television, but now that there's internet, they're slowly understanding, and I don't think they've adapted as quickly, but they're slowly adapting, and they're saying, hey, people want this content wherever, on their mobile device, on their laptops or whatever. Let's cater to them. Let's give them packages and things like that. Right. And so now there's premium packages where you can watch certain games of hockey or football, and then there's free content as well, which kind of draws in that audience.
So you're saying that they've done a very good job at kind of shooing away any competitors from entering the space, because I don't see anybody getting in and competing against the NHL. in the NFL, they did have, some. They had the XFL actually. So the
XFL, I remember that.
The WWF or WWE, Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
He came up with his own football league, which was actually
It was actually a pretty innovative idea.
Yeah, it was actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know why it failed. Maybe they couldn't develop the right traction around it, but it was a cool idea. But I don't see why a section of players, if I'm Sidney Crosby or Connor McDavid or a number of these hockey players, and say, hey guys, we're getting screwed out of our deals here. We could be making X number of money playing in our own league. Why don't we, as the superstars, go ahead and make our own league, our own infrastructure, write our own deals, and basically dominate, make more money playing sports in a new league. Just all the superstars get up and go, because everything is now player driven.
Yeah.
And it's like a celebrity culture.
Right. But I think they're locked in too much into that whole system.
Yeah.
They get paid a lot of money. It's honestly a lot of effort to get a group of players and get them up and out of the NHL and into another league. And I don't think anybody wants to do that. I think they're just comfortable. I mean, I would be comfortable making $8-9 million a year.
Right.
And so if you think about it, you're either making $8-9 million a year for 10-15 years or however many long, whatever your contract is. That's almost like the safe, comfortable option. Or do you take a risk, maybe not make any money?
Do you choose yourself?
Well, ultimately, I think the players are choosing their careers,
right,
as hockey players,
right.
So in that way, they're choosing themselves,
right. So I want to ask you this. One of the, are you familiar with Twitch?
Yes.
So Twitch is it's basically YouTube for watching other people play games.
Yeah.
Esports is becoming
huge,
massive as well.
Absolutely.
I talked to Mr. Patel about this as well.
Will continue. I would say maybe if esports are really going to take off to the point of people showing up in the United States to fill stadiums or arenas to watch, one team of Madden players play another team of Madden players. I think on some level that's already happening, but whether it's ever going to be as big as the real thing, I don't know. I don't know if I will live to see that. But
it's becoming big in North America, but it was already huge in Asian countries, right?
I don't get this at all.
Yeah.
And what I was trying to explain to Nihar is that when I would go to my family friends' houses, everybody had like a Nintendo or like an N64 or some Sega Genesis.
Yeah.
And, there'd only be 2 controllers. And of course, when you go to somebody's house, there's like 8-10 people there. And then a lot of what happens at these parties, and I don't know if this happened to you growing up, but I would go to a party and we would just watch people play
video
games, and while we sat in the background. And to be honest, and then sometimes the host would play, and that is the mark of a terrible host. When you are fucking playing your own games in your own house. Terrible. And I would go home and I would be so disappointed, because why am I going to somebody else's house to watch other people play games? It's just that's my rant on it.
Yeah.
But now I see people at their homes watching other people play games. I think it's completely, I didn't understand it then, when I was a kid. I don't understand it now. Please explain this phenomenon to me.
I think first off, there's a small difference between watching professionals play gaming at the highest level. There's something, and I think we can all admire a really well-paid, professional, world-class athlete doing something really well in their sport. Right. And I think that translates into esports as well. I think there's a certain aspect of that. So
because you play the game,
and
then you're playing the game at a certain level.
and you admire and respect
other people.
Absolutely. And I don't know what it is. I watched some gameplay.
Because are you into gaming?
I'm not into gaming, but I do like watching the highest players play.
What would you watch?
Sometimes I watch Counter-Strike. I was into Counter-Strike a lot when I was in university, which is a first-person shooter.
And is that an online game?
It is an online game. I like the social aspect of it. So that's why I would play.
What was your code name, or what was your avatar name?
I think it was Dynamitable. Why are you laughing?
Dynamitable?
Yeah.
Dynamitable.
Yeah. It was
why did you go?
It wasn't even an original name. It was a name that I stole from another game. And this other game, I remember the game really well. It's called Armored Core. It's about robots. You're basically a robot, and you're piloting a robot, and you're fighting other robots. And one of the robots' name was Dynamitable, and I was like, "Oh, that's such a cool name. I'm gonna use that sometime."
So then, would you be talking to these when you're playing Counter-Strike? Are you talking?
No.
But you have the headset and you're talking. It's like Dynamitable. Watch out for the bunker. There's a bomb there.
If I was talking, then I'd be talking to friends, and we'd just be saying Wang or Sean or whatever. So, but otherwise, no, I wouldn't be chatting with other people online.
Right. Dynamitable. Wow.
Yeah.
Was that your email address? Dynamitable@hotmail.com?
No, it was not. No.
Okay.
Do you want to know what it was?
Yes, I
with
do.
Hotmail?
Yeah, what was your Hotmail name?
It was Notorious_123.
Oh my god.
It was the best.
Notorious123.
My really good friend, he decided to make fun of me. He made another email, unnotorious321 at hotmail.com.
Now, is it because you were into Notorious B.I.G.?
No. I don't even know what it was. I think when email came out, and maybe we're getting a little sidetracked a bit, but when email came out, I had no idea what made for a good username or Hotmail email address. And I think I was watching like a high school TV program, and the guy on the TV show, he said that he was creating a username of Notorious something. And I was like, oh, I'll just use that. And I just decided to do Notorious_123. Okay. I don't know.
See,
I can't really explain it.
That's why we need a podcast completely dedicated to your life, because it is fascinating.
No, it's not fascinating.
Dynamitable. Okay,
do you play games?
No, I don't. I don't play games.
Do you watch people play games?
I do not watch because of my traumatic childhood experience. There's no way I'm gonna watch anybody play a game.
But you must have enjoyed it when you were watching people play games, no?
Other people watch playing games?
Yeah.
I could be bored to death. What am I going to watch other people playing games?
But then why did you go to the other person's house if that's all
we
you're
had
going to
to.
do?
Our parents were there. Like, they're like, we're going to, like, the dude's house. We got to go. We got
similarity there. Because both of them are performing at their highest level, and they're each kind of doing the thing that they're passionate about.
It's two types of entertainment, and I'll see it as entertainment, right? When I'm watching a TED Talk, for example, I'm watching it, one, to be entertained, two, to be learning something.
Yeah.
If I'm watching hockey, I'm watching for, one, the entertainment, two, I'm actually watching for people that I like to watch. Like, I'm really obsessed with dangles and deeks and moves, like, more so than any other human on the planet.
I think it's, I have a friend who is not a sports fan who made a joke once that it's a way for straight grown men to cry. I don't know if that's exactly true. I think it combines a lot of different things. I think when it comes to sports like football in the United States, or even football overseas in soccer, as we call it here in the U.S., it is really an identification with your community, with your town, with your country, with your city. I think a lot of people, that's why college sports is so big. People associate their university experience, but also if you live in Alabama, whether you went to University of Alabama, or if you went to Auburn, you tend to pick a side. And that's how you identify your social membership, in your life. You we make associations, and that starts to constitute who you are. And so I think that's a very big part of it. I think, a lot of people who are rabid fans of a team are really saying they're rabid fans of where they're from or the people who they're with, that this is their tribe. I think intrinsically, it can be very dramatic when it's great. I mean, even baseball, which is what most people would say is probably the least exciting sport, it can get very exciting, in the World Series and in the playoffs. And I think there is a lot of excitement and drama to sports, and there always have been, probably since the days, of ancient Greece. There's suspense, there's unexpected outcomes, there's heroes, there's goats. It has all the sort of things that you find in drama, and in that sense, my friend is right that it does inspire people to cry. And one of the funniest things I've seen in the last couple of weeks is, I think it's a commercial for DraftKings which have been ubiquitous, by the way. They've had, I think the figure that I saw in the New York Times today was 8,000 ads have aired in the weeks running up to the start of the NFL season.
Wow.
But a lot of them feature men who are crying. And this is not even from an actual game. This is from the results of their fantasy team and how they performed in that week's tournament or something. So, I think in that sense, my friend was right that there is a cathartic experience happening there for men. And for women, women are sports fans too and are incredible athletes. And I think a lot of the same things apply there, team membership. And I think if you played sports and you like competition just in general in your life, you work in the business world, competition is a big part of that. And, it's a place where it seems like sports is very egalitarian in the sense that it doesn't really matter where you came from. I mean, it does in some sense, but it's the most kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the most meritocratic form of competition that we see. Everything else, whether it's the business world where people think somebody was born with a certain advantage, or the entertainment world, this seems like everything is settled within the confines of this game and the rules that are established, and that's where performers have to perform their best.
So, Wayne, if I gave you a crystal ball, in 5 years, let's say in 10 years,
okay,
where do you think sports will be? Will it be unchanged? Will we find new ways to interact with sports? Opinions?
I think sports itself will always be there. It's so hard to disrupt something that is almost ingrained in the culture, in the identity of individuals in a nation. Canadians will always be, I think, into hockey. I think that's... You can't just come around and say, hey, tennis is going to be the national sport of hockey. Well, it won't be there. In terms of consuming content, I mean, it's already starting to get there. I don't know what it will be in 10 years, but I mean, I think we'll all have access to real-time sports anytime we want it. I don't think that's available now, but I think we are getting there. Yeah, I don't know. I think...
Well, I mean, here's
what do you think?
Here's my opinion. In the future, sports will be highly leveraged towards the focus will really be on the athletes. Like this idea of celebrity culture. People will, and it already exists today, like people love athletes, but we're going to take it to a new level with the advance of like GoPro, and eventually you'll have your GoPro on your head. It'll be so small that you can follow a player around. So if I wanted to, follow James Harden, I could, watch James Harden play basketball like the whole game. I can see what he does, at post game or pre game, and I can follow him around. So the channels, they'll almost have channels. So for example, if I wanted to watch Connor McDavid I can subscribe to his channel,
right?
Or I can subscribe to somebody's channel, and so it won't only be around your pure athleticism for a team to get you. It will actually be based on if people want to follow you, because if you get more followers, you'll get more money, and you'll be incentivized more, etc., etc., etc. So I think we're going to become completely player focused, and also in the game, like we are going to be watching games as if we were first person, like there, through virtual reality and all these different ways. So I think that it's not disrupting the sport by any means. Like I don't think there's going to be, in 10 years, I don't think there's going to be another NHL. I don't think there's going to be another NFL. So the sport is not going to die. But what I'm finding is that these organizations are doing a really good job at preserving their own sport. And maybe sports just does that. Like I find baseball the boringest sport in the world, and it hasn't changed in years. Yet people love it.
So if I were to give you a crystal ball and kind of ask you where sports, not just the NFL, but where sports is going to be in around 5 to 10 years, how would it change? How would it look? And I want to get your thoughts. Maybe we'll look back at this podcast and say, hey, this is what he said.
40 years from now.
Yeah, George R. Martin will do a piece on you and say, in this podcast into 2015, he said.
Yeah, right. Well, one of the things that I had to kind of go back and reread some of Game of Thrones, some of the books that George R. Martin wrote. And I always go back to this one passage, and it's probably one of the most iconic ones in Game of Thrones, in the TV show, but also in the books, is there's a moment where in Game of Thrones, which is the first book of the Song of Ice and Fire series, there's a moment where Cersei Lannister, if you know the show, she's kind of the closest thing to an evil, calculating Lady Macbeth type. She's talking to Ned Stark, and she says, Ned Stark, of course, being this honorable guy who doesn't really want to play the game of politics. He's just there to do a good job and help his friend, the king, as his right-hand man. And there's a moment where Cersei calls him out and says, when you play the Game of Thrones, there's only winning and losing, or there's only living and dying. There's no middle ground. And, as a football fan, I happen to think that football may be in trouble with that as well, because football, as we know it, is a violent sport. And as we realize just how violent it is and the toll it takes on players when it comes to concussions, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, that there will be a push to make it more safe, or find that middle ground between flag football that we played growing up and the violent sport it is today, or has been in its history. And I just think it's one of these sports where there's no middle ground. And I think it either has to be this violent thing, or it has to be flag football. And it's probably not going to do as well as a flag football sport. And it just may not even exist if it's people sort of lightly tackling each other or pushing people onto the ground. I just, in that sense, I think there is no game of football that's not living and dying. It's only really, if you seek the middle, you may have nothing.
Right.
And that's why I think football is really in danger in the long term. Not of going away, I would say, but being de-emphasized like boxing was. Boxing was way more popular as a sport in the 30s, 40s, 50s, even before then. And yeah, it's still popular, and there are a few people like Floyd Mayweather who still bring lots of viewers to anything they do. But just boxing as a sport in the consciousness of the public is just not what it used to be. And I think there are a lot of reasons why, but, I think probably the main reason why is it just didn't seem, it outlived its usefulness to the generation that identified itself most with it. With, like, other things came along, and boxing at a certain point didn't seem as important, or just seemed like a relic of a certain time. And now we have UFC, which is still, pretty violent.
Yeah.
I'm not really a fan of, truth be told, I don't know much about boxing and I don't know much about UFC, but, that's emerged, but that still feels niche. It doesn't feel like something everybody talks about.
This has been great. We learned about each other. I learned about that you were Dynamito. I can't remember.
Dynamitable. Yeah.
We learned a little bit more about sports. I'm looking forward to the next episode. What do we have on tap? Industries. Well, I'm interested in the music industry.
Yeah, music industry would be cool. I'm trying to get someone in advertising. I haven't solidified that contact yet.
Are you into politics at all?
No.
Politics would be a cool thing to disrupt. And you know who's disruptive right now? Donald Trump. Did you watch? You didn't watch the GOP last night.
I don't watch news.
Yeah, that's right. But CNN, it actually was the highest rated event on CNN.
Do you think we could get Donald Trump on this episode on a podcast?
You know what? There's no harm in trying. We should probably reach out to him and ask him.
Okay.
Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Please leave a review on all the different podcast things that you can. It will really help us out. We're seeing amazing traction on this podcast. And any last words? A shout out or call out?
No, yeah, just leave a review. Get in touch with us. I think we have a website, so leave a comment or send us an email and
tweet us.
Yeah,
at Sean Kanungo,
at Wang Yip.
And we're out.
Thank you for listening.